The jungle was dying around them. 12 Navy SEALs, America's most elite warriors, were pinned down in a kill zone that was rapidly becoming their tomb. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Hendris pressed himself against the moss-covered log, trying to make his 6-foot frame invisible as bullets chewed through the vegetation above his head. His radio crackled with desperation. "Viper 6, this is Ground Team Alpha. We need immediate air support. We need QRF, we need anything. We're getting massacred out here." The response was not what he wanted to hear. "Ground Team Alpha, no air assets available. Heavy weather. QRF is 40 minutes out. You need to hold your position." 40 minutes. They'd all be dead in 10. The mission had been textbook until it wasn't. Intelligence said the compound would have maybe 20 hostiles, light resistance in and out before breakfast. But intelligence had been catastrophically wrong. The compound had been a trap, and now his team was surrounded by what looked like an entire battalion of well-trained, well-equipped fighters who knew exactly what they were doing. "Chief," his teammate Rodriguez shouted over the gunfire. "We got movement on the left flank. They're trying to surround us." Hendris did the math. 12 SEALs with dwindling ammunition against an enemy force that seemed to have unlimited numbers and firepower. The mathematics were simple and brutal. They were going to die here in this godforsaken jungle thousands of miles from home. He keyed his radio one more time, his voice calm despite the chaos. "Viper 6, Ground Team Alpha, if you've got anyone nearby, now would be a really good time." There was a long pause. Then a voice he'd never heard before came through his earpiece. Female, young, calm as ice water. "Ground Team Alpha, I have your position. I'm inbound. Tell your boys to keep their heads down. This is about to get interesting." "Who the hell is this? Someone who doesn't miss." Before Hendris could respond, the jungle erupted with a sound he'd heard countless times in combat, the distinctive crack of a precision rifle. But this wasn't random fire. This was surgical. One shot, one kill. The enemy machine gunner who'd been tearing apart their position crumpled silently. Another shot. The spotter next to him dropped. A third shot. The enemy commander coordinating the assault fell backward, a neat hole where his forehead used to be. "What the hell?" Rodriguez whispered. Hendris stared into the dense jungle, trying to locate the shooter. Whoever she was operating at a level he'd rarely seen. Each shot was finding a target his team couldn't even see, eliminating threats with a precision that seemed almost supernatural. "Ground Team Alpha." The voice came through again. "I count 25 hostiles in your engagement area. Give me 2 minutes, and whatever you do, don't shoot the person coming from your 6 o'clock. That's me." 25 hostiles. She was planning to drop 25 enemy fighters alone. 48 hours earlier, Sabrina Cole had been sitting in a briefing room at a classified location, listening to people who'd never been in combat tell her how to do her job. At 28, she'd learned that this was just part of the game. Let them talk. Let them think they were in charge. Then go do what actually needed to be done. "Your role is strictly reconnaissance and observation," the operations officer was saying, pointing at a map of the jungle region. "You'll be inserted 12 clicks from the target compound. Set up an observation post, monitor enemy activity, report back. That's it. No direct action unless absolutely necessary for self-defense." Sabrina nodded politely, making appropriate notes, looking every bit the compliant contractor who would follow orders to the letter. Inside, she was already planning for the moment when those orders would become irrelevant, because she'd been doing this work long enough to know that reconnaissance missions in hostile territory rarely stayed reconnaissance missions. Her official title was Military Intelligence Contractor, Field Analyst. Her actual job was significantly more complicated. Sabrina was what the intelligence community called a singleton operator, someone who worked alone deep in denied territory, gathering intelligence that couldn't be obtained any other way. She spoke 4 languages fluently, could navigate by stars alone, and had survived in some of the world's most hostile environments using nothing but her wits and training. But what made her truly exceptional, what made her valuable enough that certain people at certain agencies kept her on speed dial, was her ability with a rifle. Specifically, her ability to hit targets at ranges that most snipers considered impossible. She'd learned to shoot from her grandfather, a Vietnam-era Marine sniper who taught her that shooting was 10% technique and 90% understanding wind, distance, and patience. By 15, she was outperforming adult competitors at long-range competitions. By 20, she'd been recruited by an organization that officially didn't exist to do work that officially never happened. The briefing ended with the usual warnings about rules of engagement, operational security, and the importance of following protocols. Sabrina smiled, shook hands, and returned to her quarters to prepare. Her gear was already packed. Custom-built rifle broken down into components that fit in an innocuous hiking backpack. Ammunition matched grade rounds, each one hand-selected for consistency. Ghillie suit components that could be assembled from local vegetation. Water purification tablets, emergency medical kit, satellite phone with encryption, and a sidearm that she hoped she'd never need but carried anyway. She studied the maps one more time, memorizing terrain features, identifying potential observation positions, planning primary and alternate routes. The insertion point was in dense triple canopy jungle, the kind of terrain where visibility dropped to meters and navigation became an exercise in dead reckoning and instinct. The helicopter insertion was scheduled for over 200 hours, low and fast, using terrain to mask their approach, no lights, relying on the pilot's night vision and skill to avoid detection. Sabrina had done this dozens of times, but it never got routine. Every insertion carried the risk of compromise, of enemy fire, of mechanical failure that would send them spiraling into the jungle canopy. But this one went smoothly. The helicopter flared just long enough for her to jump into waist-high grass, then disappeared into the night, the sound of its rotors fading quickly into the ambient jungle noise. She was alone, 12 kilometers from the target in a country that would deny she existed if she got caught. Perfect. She moved through the jungle with practiced silence, using terrain and vegetation to mask her movement, stopping frequently to listen, to sense, to ensure she wasn't walking into an ambush. The jungle at night was alive with sound. Insects, animals, the rustle of wind through leaves. Learning to distinguish natural sounds from human-made ones was a skill that took years to develop and seconds to lose if you got complacent. It took her 6 hours to cover the 12 kilometers to her planned observation post. Slow, careful movement, avoiding trails, avoiding areas where humans might be, staying in the densest vegetation where her presence would be harder to detect. She found a position on a ridgeline overlooking the valley where the target compound sat. Perfect sight lines, natural cover, multiple escape routes. She assembled her rifle, constructed a hide using local vegetation, and settled in to watch. The compound below was more active than intelligence had suggested. She counted at least 40 fighters, not 20. They were well armed, disciplined, conducting patrols with professional precision. This wasn't a ragtag militia. This was a trained military force. She reported her observations through the encrypted satellite phone, speaking in brief phrases that conveyed essential information without revealing details if the transmission was intercepted. The voice on the other end acknowledged but didn't seem concerned. The SEAL mission was still a go. Sabrina felt the first stirring of unease. Something was wrong here. The intelligence didn't match reality. The enemy was far stronger than anticipated. The SEALs were walking into a situation that could go bad very quickly. But she wasn't in command. She was just the observer. She'd done her job by reporting. What happened next was someone else's decision, except she couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching a disaster unfold in slow motion. The SEAL team insertion happened the following night. Sabrina watched through her scope as the helicopters came in fast and low, dropping the 12-man team at the edge of the jungle before disappearing back into the darkness. She could track their movement through the dense vegetation, their infrared signatures visible through her thermal scope. Moving with the confident precision of operators who'd done this 1,000 times, the assault on the compound was textbook. Breaching charges, blowing doors, flashbangs disorienting defenders, controlled pairs of gunfire taking down targets. The SEALs were doing everything right, and then the trap sprung. Hidden positions around the compound opened fire simultaneously. Machine guns, rifles, RPGs. The compound had been bait and the SEALs had taken it. Now enemy forces were pouring in from multiple directions, trying to surround and destroy the American team. Sabrina watched the SEALs fighting their way out, moving with desperate speed toward a defensible position. They were good, incredibly good, but they were outnumbered by at least 5 to 1, maybe more. Enemy fighters kept appearing from the jungle, an endless stream of armed men moving to encircle the SEAL team. She heard the radio traffic, the desperate calls for support, the grim acknowledgement that help was too far away. This was the moment when she was supposed to stay hidden, maintain her position, preserve her cover. She was reconnaissance, not direct action. Getting involved would compromise her mission and potentially her life. Sabrina made her decision in about 3 seconds. Fuck that, she muttered, settling deeper into her firing position. She'd been calculating ranges since the assault started, identifying priority targets, planning her engagement sequence. The SEALs were roughly 800 meters away, taking cover in a small depression ringed by fallen logs. Enemy forces were closing from 3 directions using fire and maneuver tactics that showed sophisticated training. Her first target was the machine gun team on the left flank. They were pouring fire into the SEAL position, keeping the Americans pinned down while other fighters moved to flank. She could see the gunner and his assistant through her scope, both partially concealed behind a fallen tree. Sabrina controlled her breathing, letting her heart rate slow, feeling the wind on her face, calculating the correction needed for distance and wind drift. The jungle was humid, which would affect bullet trajectory. The slight breeze was moving right to left. She needed to aim high and left to compensate. She exhaled slowly and pressed the trigger. The rifle recoiled against her shoulder with familiar force. Through the scope, she saw the machine gunner's head snap back, his body going limp. The assistant gunner froze for a critical second, trying to understand what happened. That second was his last. Sabrina's second shot dropped him before he could react. She transitioned to the next target, an enemy squad leader coordinating the assault on the right flank. He was using hand signals to direct his men, positioning them for a final push that would overrun the SEAL position. Sabrina put a round through his chest. He fell and his squad's coordination immediately deteriorated. That's when she keyed her radio and announced herself to the SEALs. The response was immediate. The enemy forces, confused by fighters dropping with no apparent cause, began to hesitate. Their advance stalled as squad leaders tried to figure out where the fire was coming from. In that moment of confusion, the SEALs began returning fire with renewed aggression, taking advantage of the enemy's disorganization. Sabrina worked methodically through her target list. Enemy commanders first, the men giving orders, coordinating movement. Then heavy weapons operators, machine gunners, RPG teams, anyone who could inflict mass casualties. Then exposed infantry who posed immediate threats to the SEAL position. Each shot was deliberate. Each shot accounted for wind, distance, humidity, the angle of the slope, the movement of the target. This wasn't spray and pray. This was precision shooting at the highest level. Each trigger pressed the culmination of dozens of calculations and adjustments performed in fractions of seconds. Her fourth target was an RPG gunner preparing to fire into the SEAL position. She shot him as he lifted the weapon to his shoulder. The rocket detonated in place, taking out the gunner and 2 nearby fighters. Fifth target, a spotter directing mortar fire. He was using a radio, calling in coordinates that would drop high explosives directly onto the Americans. Sabrina's round entered just below his ear. The mortars fell silent. She was operating in a zone of absolute focus, a state where time seemed to slow and every detail became crystal clear. The humid jungle air, the weight of the rifle, the slight tremble in the vegetation that indicated wind direction, the thermal signatures of enemy fighters moving through the dense foliage. 6th through 10th targets fell in rapid succession. An enemy sniper who'd been trying to locate her position. A squad leader rallying his men for another assault. 3 fighters setting up a flanking position that would have given them a clear shot at the SEALs. By her 11th shot, the enemy was in complete disarray. They'd figured out roughly where the fire was coming from, but roughly wasn't good enough. Sabrina was 800 meters away, concealed in dense jungle, firing from a position that gave her clear sight lines while keeping her nearly invisible. Enemy fighters began shooting wildly in her general direction, but their fire was uncoordinated and inaccurate. They were panicking, which was exactly what she wanted. Panicked soldiers made mistakes, exposed themselves, forgot their training. She continued her methodical elimination. Target 12, a fighter with a radio who was probably calling for reinforcements. Target 13, another machine gunner trying to suppress the SEAL position. Target 14, a squad attempting to use smoke grenades to mask their approach. The SEALs, understanding they had a guardian angel, began maneuvering more aggressively. They were laying down suppressive fire, using the enemy's confusion to improve their position, evacuating their wounded. Sabrina could hear the relief in their radio traffic, the grim determination replacing earlier desperation. But the fight wasn't over. Enemy reinforcements were arriving, fresh fighters moving in from the main compound. Sabrina counted at least 15 more hostiles entering the engagement area, some of them wearing tactical vests and carrying weapons that suggested professional military training. Ground Team Alpha, she transmitted, new hostiles inbound from your 3 o'clock, squad-sized element with possible heavy weapons, engaging now. She shifted her aim to the approaching reinforcements. These fighters were being more cautious, using cover effectively, advancing with tactical discipline. But caution only went so far against a shooter they couldn't see or locate. Target 15 dropped while trying to cross an open area. Target 16 fell while directing his squad from behind a tree. Targets 17 and 18 went down in quick succession as they exposed themselves to set up a machine gun. Sabrina was burning through ammunition now, each shot dropping another enemy fighter. Each trigger press removing another threat to the SEAL team. Her shoulder ached from the rifle's recoil, her eyes strained from hours of staring through the scope, but her hands remained steady, her breathing controlled, her focus absolute. Target 19 was attempting to flank the SEAL position from an unexpected angle, moving alone through dense vegetation. Sabrina tracked him through thermal imaging, waiting until he paused to check his position. One shot. He crumpled silently into the undergrowth. Target 20 tried to rally the remaining fighters, shouting orders, trying to restore some tactical coherence to the disintegrating assault. Sabrina's round silenced him mid-sentence. The enemy's will was breaking. She could see it in how they moved, less aggressive, more defensive, looking for ways to retreat rather than advance. The trap they had set for the SEALs had become their own kill zone, dominated by an invisible shooter who seemed to anticipate their every move. Targets 21 through 23 fell as they attempted to provide covering fire for a retreat. Target 24 went down while trying to recover his dead commander's radio. Target 25, the last immediate threat to the SEAL team, dropped while attempting to maneuver into a position that would have allowed him to engage the Americans. And then suddenly it was over. The surviving enemy fighters were fleeing, abandoning their weapons, disappearing into the jungle. The sustained gunfire that had been constant for the past 8 minutes fell silent, replaced by the normal sounds of the jungle. Insects, birds, the rustle of wind through leaves. Sabrina remained in position, scanning for threats, ensuring the enemy wasn't regrouping for another assault. But her thermal scope showed fighters streaming away from the engagement area, their retreat chaotic and disorganized. They'd had enough. Ground Team Alpha, she transmitted, hostiles are retreating. Your area is secure. I'm coming to you. Don't shoot me. She could hear the exhaustion and relief in Chief Hendriss's response. Copy that. We see you on thermals. Come ahead. And ma'am, I don't know who the hell you are, but you just saved 12 lives today. Sabrina broke down her hide, carefully policing her brass, leaving evidence behind was unprofessional, and began moving toward the SEAL position. She moved carefully, making noise to announce her presence, keeping her rifle pointed at the ground in a non-threatening manner. The last thing she needed was to survive the battle only to get shot by friendly fire. She emerged from the jungle into the SEAL position to find 12 of America's most elite warriors staring at her like she'd just materialized from thin air, which from their perspective she basically had. Chief Hendriss was a big man, 6 feet of solid muscle with a beard and tactical gear that made him look like a modern Viking. He studied her with professional interest, taking in her compact frame, the custom rifle slung across her back, the ghillie suit components still attached to her gear. "You're the shooter?" he asked, his tone suggesting he was still processing what had just happened. "I'm the shooter," Sabrina confirmed. "How many did you drop?" 25 confirmed, maybe more. Hard to tell with the ones behind cover. One of the other SEALs, a younger operator with corporal stripes, shook his head in disbelief. "Ma'am, I've been shooting my whole adult life. I'm a designated marksman. And what you just did, that was, I don't even know what to call it. That was superhuman. Just training and practice," Sabrina said, "and good timing. You guys were about to have a really bad day." "We were about to have our last day," Hendricks corrected. "If you hadn't shown up when you did, we'd be calling for body bags instead of extract." He extended his hand. "Chief Petty Officer Marcus Hendriss. And you are?" "Sabrina Cole, military intelligence contractor." She shook his hand, noting the strength in his grip and the genuine gratitude in his eyes. "Contractor." Another SEAL repeated, his tone skeptical. "What kind of contractor operates alone in hostile territory and shoots like a Delta Force sniper?" "The kind that gets hired for situations like this," Sabrina replied evenly. She wasn't offended by the skepticism. She'd dealt with it her entire career. The assumption that because she was young and female, she couldn't possibly be as skilled as her record suggested. She'd learned to let her work speak for itself. Rodriguez, the SEAL who'd been calling out enemy positions during the fight, approached with fresh respect in his eyes. "Mom, I've worked with some of the best snipers in the military, and what you just did, engaging multiple targets at that range in these conditions under stress, that's world class. Where'd you train?" "Here and there," Sabrina said vaguely. The truth was that her training came from multiple sources: military schools, private instruction from retired special operations snipers, thousands of hours of self-practice, and real-world experience in places that never appeared in official records. But that wasn't information she shared casually. Right now, we should focus on getting you guys extracted. This area is going to get hot when the enemy regroups and calls for backup. Hendris nodded, already keying his radio. Viper 6, Ground Team Alpha, hostile contact broken. We're secure for extract. We also have an additional friendly one contractor who just saved our asses. We'll need one more seat on the bird. The response came back quickly. Ground Team Alpha, understand additional passenger. Extract birds are inbound. ETA 12 minutes. Move to primary LZ. Roger. Moving now. Hendris looked at his team. You heard the man. Let's move. Johnson, Ramirez, carry the wounded. Everyone else, tactical spacing. Watch our flanks. Ms. Cole, you're with me. I want you where I can see you, not because I don't trust you, but because I don't want to accidentally leave behind the person who just saved our lives. The SEAL team moved through the jungle with professional efficiency. Despite their exhaustion and wounds, 2 men were being carried, both conscious but unable to walk. The rest maintained security, scanning for threats, ready to engage if the enemy returned. Sabrina moved with them, her rifle ready, her eyes constantly scanning. The fight was over, but they weren't safe yet. Plenty of operations had gone wrong in the final moments when exhaustion and relief made people careless. The landing zone was a small clearing, barely large enough for helicopters. The SEALs spread out in a defensive perimeter, watching the jungle for any sign of pursuit. Sabrina took a position that gave her overlapping fire with the team's automatic weapons. If the enemy attacked during extract, she wanted to be able to support the defensive fire. Contact left, one of the SEALs shouted. Sabrina's rifle was up and tracking before she'd consciously processed the warning. Through her scope, she saw 3 enemy fighters emerging from the jungle, apparently survivors from the earlier battle who'd decided to make one last attempt at revenge. Her first shot dropped the lead fighter before he could raise his weapon. The second fighter managed to get off a burst of automatic fire, none of which came close to hitting anything, before Sabrina's second shot ended him. The third fighter dove for cover, but Sabrina had already calculated where he'd land. Her third shot found him as he tried to scramble behind a fallen log. Clear, she called out calmly. The SEALs stared at her again. Jesus Christ, Rodriguez muttered. Does she ever miss? Not that I've seen, Hendris replied, and I'm starting to think we need to rethink our definition of contractor. The helicopters arrived moments later. 2 Blackhawks coming in fast and low, their door gunners scanning for threats. The extract was textbook SEALs loading quickly but carefully, ensuring the wounded were secure, doing accountability to make sure no one was left behind. Sabrina was last on board, taking a seat near the door where she could provide covering fire if needed. As the helicopter lifted off, banking away from the jungle and accelerating towards safety, she finally allowed herself to relax slightly, not completely. She never relaxed completely in a combat zone, but enough to acknowledge that the immediate danger had passed. Hendris sat across from her, studying her with an expression that mixed gratitude with professional curiosity. Over the headset, his voice came through clearly despite the helicopter noise. Ms. Cole, when we get back, there are going to be a lot of people who want to talk to you. Debrief, after-action reports, probably some medals and commendations. I'd prefer to avoid all of that if possible. Sabrina replied. I work better when people don't know who I am or what I do. I get that, but you just saved 12 SEALs. That's not something that goes unnoticed. Then let's compromise. I'll do the debrief for operational purposes but keep my name out of official reports. Attribute the support to local assets or intelligence contractor or whatever vague term works. I'm more effective when I'm not famous. Hendris considered this. I can probably make that happen, but my team knows who you are, and they're going to tell this story. Maybe not with your name attached, but they're going to tell it because what you did today. That's the kind of thing that becomes legend. The mysterious sniper who appeared out of nowhere and single-handedly turned a massacre into a rescue. As long as the legend doesn't include my actual identity, I can live with that, Sabrina said. She looked out the helicopter door at the jungle disappearing below them. Somewhere down there, enemy fighters were regrouping, reporting what happened, trying to understand how their perfect ambush had turned into a disaster. Let them wonder. Mystery was one of her most effective weapons. The debriefing took place in a secure facility that officially didn't exist, hidden deep in the jungle on what the maps called disputed territory, but what everyone knew was a covert operations base. Sabrina sat across from Colonel James Hartwell, a career intelligence officer with 20 years of experience in special operations. Hendris sat to her right, still in his combat gear, refusing to leave until he'd personally ensured Sabrina received proper recognition for what she'd done. Ms. Cole. The colonel began reviewing the preliminary reports on his tablet. I've been reading Chief Hendriss's account of today's engagement. The numbers are, frankly, they're hard to believe. 25 confirmed enemy kills from a single shooter at ranges exceeding 800 meters in jungle conditions while the targets were actively engaged in combat operations. That's accurate, sir, Sabrina confirmed. I've been in this business a long time, Miss Cole. I've worked with some of the best snipers the military has ever produced. What you're describing, what Chief Hendriss is describing, represents a level of marksmanship that approaches the theoretical maximum of what's humanly possible. I had good conditions, sir. Clear sight lines from my position, thermal optics to identify targets through vegetation, and the enemy was focused on the SEAL team, not looking for a threat from my position. Those factors combined to create an ideal engagement scenario. Ideal for you, perhaps. Catastrophic for the enemy. The colonel leaned back in his chair. I need to understand your background, Miss Cole. Your file says you're a contractor with intelligence analysis specializations, but what I'm seeing in these reports suggests capabilities more consistent with Tier 1 Special Operations personnel. Before Sabrina could respond, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Red emergency lights began strobing in the corridors, casting everything in an eerie crimson glow. The colonel's radio erupted with urgent traffic. Sir, we have a situation. Enemy assault force approaching from multiple vectors. Estimated force strength between 40 and 50 hostiles. They're heavily armed and moving with tactical coordination. Distance to perimeter, 800 meters and closing. Sabrina saw the color drain from the colonel's face. This facility was supposed to be secret, secured by its remote location and careful operational security. An enemy assault here would be catastrophic not just for the personnel present, but for the intelligence compromise it represented. Maps, communications equipment, personnel rosters, everything that would reveal the extent of American operations in this region. Lock down the facility. Hartwell ordered, his voice steady despite the crisis. Get everyone armed and in defensive positions. Call for QRF support. Sir, QRF is 25 minutes out minimum. Weather's deteriorating. We might not get air support at all. The colonel looked at his tactical display, watching the red icons representing enemy forces converging on the facility from 3 different directions. How many combat-capable personnel do we have on site? 15, sir. But only 5 have recent combat experience. The rest are support staff, intel analysts, communication specialists, medical personnel. Against 50 trained fighters, Hendricks said grimly, already checking his weapon. My team's here, but we're down to maybe 60% combat effectiveness. We're wounded, exhausted, and low on ammunition. Sabrina was already standing, her mind shifting from debrief mode to combat operations. She moved to the facility's tactical display, studying the terrain, the approach vectors, the defensive positions. Colonel, I need detailed topography of the area surrounding this facility. Elevation data, vegetation density, natural choke points. Ms. Cole, you're a civilian contractor. Who just saved 12 Navy SEALs and who has capabilities you clearly need right now? Sabrina interrupted. Sir, with respect, we don't have time for protocol discussions. That enemy force will be in assault range in 10 minutes. We need to set up a defense and we need to do it now. Hartwell hesitated only a moment, then nodded. Show her everything. Miss Cole, what do you need? Sabrina studied the tactical display, her fingers tracing potential firing positions, calculating ranges and angles. The facility was built into a hillside, surrounded by dense jungle on 3 sides with a cleared approach on the 4th. Natural choke points where the jungle thinned. High ground positions that would provide clear sight lines. I need to get outside the perimeter, she said. Set up in an elevated position with clear sight lines to the enemy approach vectors. Same tactics as before. I'll engage at long range, disrupt their assault coordination, eliminate high-value targets, buy time for your QRF to arrive. That's a suicide mission. One of the other officers protested. You'll be completely exposed, behind enemy lines with no support and no extraction plan. I'll be 800 to 1,000 meters from their assault positions, Sabrina corrected. Concealed in jungle terrain that I've already scouted, engaging targets from a position they can't easily locate or effectively return fire on. It's not suicide, it's asymmetric warfare. Hendricks spoke up. Colonel, I've seen what she can do. If she says she can hold off that assault force, I believe her. My team will hold the facility perimeter. We'll create a defensive kill zone at the cleared approaches. She picks off their leadership and heavy weapons. We handle anyone who makes it through. It's not a great plan, but it's better than getting overrun. The colonel looked at Sabrina for a long moment, weighing impossible options. Finally he nodded. Do it. But Ms. Cole, if the situation becomes untenable, you extract immediately. We can't afford to lose someone with your capabilities over a facility that can be rebuilt. Understood, sir. Sabrina grabbed extra ammunition, checked her gear, and headed for the exit. As she moved past Hendris, he caught her arm. Hey, he said quietly. You don't owe us this. You already saved us once today. Nobody would blame you for sitting this one out. This isn't about owing anybody anything, Chief. There are people in this facility who can't defend themselves. Support staff who never signed up for a firefight. They need someone to keep them safe. That's reason enough. She slipped out through a camouflaged side entrance, moving quickly but carefully through the jungle. Behind her, she could hear the SEALs organizing the defense, their voices calm and professional despite the desperate situation. These men had already survived one impossible battle today. Now they were preparing for another. Sabrina reached her planned position in less than 5 minutes. A rocky outcrop on a hillside about 900 meters from the facility, elevated 20 meters above the valley floor. The position offered excellent sight lines down into the approaches while providing natural cover from return fire. She constructed a hasty hide using available vegetation, settled into a stable firing position, and began scanning through her scope. The enemy force was larger than initial reports suggested. Through her thermal optics, she counted at least 55 fighters, organized into squad-sized elements of 8 to 10 men each, moving with tactical discipline that suggested professional military training. They were using fire and maneuver tactics, maintaining intervals, communicating with hand signals. This wasn't a mob. This was a coordinated military assault. She keyed her radio. Command, this is Overwatch. I'm in position. I count 55 enemy fighters organized in 5 assault squads plus a command element. They're 300 meters from your perimeter and closing. I'm beginning engagement. Roger, Overwatch, the colonel responded. You are cleared hot. Watch your fire. Some of our people might be in forward positions. Sabrina identified her first priority target, the overall assault commander, distinguishable by his position behind the main force and the cluster of radio men and officers around him. He was gesturing, giving orders, coordinating the multi-directional assault. Taking him out would disrupt their command and control. She calculated the shot. 920 meters, slight crosswind from the east, high humidity, temperature dropping as the sun set behind the mountains. She adjusted for all variables, let her breathing settle, and squeezed the trigger. The commander dropped instantly, his officers scattering in confusion. Sabrina didn't give them time to reorganize. Her second shot took down the nearest officer who tried to take command. Her third eliminated a radio man who was probably calling for instructions. The enemy assault faltered immediately. Squad leaders looked back toward their command element, seeking guidance that was no longer there. In that moment of confusion, Sabrina shifted her aim to the leading assault elements. Target 4 was a heavy machine gunner setting up to provide suppressive fire. Target 5 was his ammunition bearer. Both dropped within seconds of each other. Target 6 was a squad leader directing his men into assault positions. Target 7 was an RPG gunner preparing to fire at the facility. Target 8 was a sniper who'd taken position to provide overwatch. He'd been scanning the wrong direction, looking for threats from the facility instead of from Sabrina's position. By her 10th shot, the enemy assault had completely stalled. Fighters were taking cover, unsure where the fire was coming from, watching their leaders and heavy weapons specialists drop without warning. Some were returning fire, but they were shooting blindly into the jungle, wasting ammunition on empty terrain. Sabrina kept working. Target 11 was another squad leader attempting to rally his men. Target 12 was a fighter with a radio, probably trying to call the main force for instructions or reinforcements. Targets 13 and 14 were attempting to flank the facility using a ravine for concealment. Sabrina tracked them through thermal imaging, waiting patiently until they emerged from the ravine. Both fell before they could take 3 steps in the open. Overwatch command. Enemy assault has stopped advancing. They're taking defensive positions approximately 200 meters from our perimeter. Whatever you're doing, it's working. Roger, command. I'm shifting fire to suppress any attempt to reorganize. Stand by. Sabrina identified the fighters who were trying to establish a new command structure. She could see them gathering in small groups, leaders attempting to restore order, to coordinate a new assault plan. She systematically eliminated anyone who appeared to be giving orders, anyone who was coordinating movement, anyone who was trying to organize the chaos back into a coherent attack. Target 15 was a senior fighter, probably a lieutenant or captain who'd moved forward to take command. Target 16 was a fighter setting up a heavy machine gun on a tripod. Target 17 was another RPG gunner. Target 18 was a sniper who'd finally figured out roughly where Sabrina's position was and was attempting to locate her for a counter shot. He never got the chance. The enemy's assault was dissolving. She could see it in their body language, in how they moved. Less aggressive, more defensive, looking for ways to disengage rather than continue the attack. They'd expected to overwhelm a lightly defended facility with a rapid assault. Instead, they were being systematically destroyed by an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't locate, couldn't effectively fight. But Sabrina knew this wasn't over. Enemy forces this size typically had backup plans, reserve elements, commanders who wouldn't give up easily. And she was right. Overwatch Command. We have new contacts. Second enemy force approaching from the east. Estimate 20 fighters moving to flank our position. Sabrina swung her rifle to cover the new threat vector. Through her scope, she could see a fresh squad of fighters attempting to use the confusion of the main assault to approach from an unexpected direction. Smart tactics. If they reached the facility's flank, they'd have clear shots at the defenders. She couldn't allow that. Target 19 was the squad leader of this flanking element. Target 20 was his second in command. Targets 21 through 23 were fighters carrying heavy weapons, a machine gun, an RPG, and what looked like a demolition charge. All four went down in rapid succession. The flanking element broke immediately. Without leadership or heavy weapons, the surviving fighters scattered into the jungle, their assault abandoned. Sabrina tracked them as they fled but held her fire. They were no longer a threat, and she needed to conserve ammunition for the main force. She shifted back to the primary assault force. They were attempting to withdraw, dragging wounded and dead with them, providing covering fire as they retreated back into the jungle. Sabrina let most of them go. They were broken, no longer combat effective. But she continued targeting anyone who appeared to be organizing a rear guard or preparing to launch a final attack. Target 24 was a fighter setting up to provide covering fire for the retreat. Target 25 was another squad leader attempting to organize a defensive line. Target 26 was a fighter with a radio who was probably calling for reinforcements or artillery support. Overwatch. Command: enemy forces are withdrawing. Repeat, hostiles are breaking contact and retreating. Assess approximately 30 enemy KIA unknown number wounded. You've stopped their assault cold. Sabrina continued scanning, watching the jungle, ensuring the enemy wasn't regrouping for another attempt. But her thermal scope showed only fleeing fighters, their retreat disorganized and panicked. The assault was over. Command: Overwatch. Enemy has withdrawn. I'm maintaining position until your QRF arrives in case they attempt to regroup. Recommend you stay at heightened alert. Roger, Overwatch. QRF inbound. ETA 10 minutes. And Ms. Cole, I don't know what we did to deserve having you here today, but thank you. You just saved this entire facility. Sabrina remained in position, watching and waiting. Her shoulder ached from the rifle's recoil. Her eyes were strained from hours of staring through optics, but she stayed alert, ready to engage if the enemy returned. They didn't. 20 minutes later, she heard the distinctive sound of incoming helicopters, the QRF arriving with heavily armed soldiers ready for a major engagement. They found only bodies, a secure facility, and one very tired contractor sitting on a hillside calmly cleaning her rifle. Colonel Hartwell personally walked out to Sabrina's position, accompanied by Hendris and several other officers. His expression was a mixture of awe, gratitude, and complete bewilderment. Ms. Cole, he said, approaching slowly. I've just reviewed the preliminary casualty assessment. 26 confirmed enemy kills from a single shooter in less than 15 minutes of engagement against a coordinated assault force that should have overrun this facility. 27. Sir, Sabrina corrected, pointing to a body that had just been discovered in the undergrowth. That one was trying to get close enough to throw grenades. 27. The colonel repeated, shaking his head. I don't have words for this. What you've done today, first saving Chief Hendris's team, now saving this entire facility. It's beyond anything I've seen in 20 years of special operations. Just doing my job, sir. No, Hendris interjected. No, ma'am. This is not just doing your job. I've worked with the best shooters in the SEAL teams, with special operations snipers who've spent their entire careers perfecting this craft. And none of them could have done what you did today. Not once, and certainly not twice. Rodriguez, who'd been examining the enemy casualties, approached with a spent brass casing in his hand. Mom, I've been tracking your shots based on the entry wounds and angles. You were engaging targets at ranges from 800 to over 1,000 meters in jungle terrain with limited visibility, while they were moving and taking cover. The level of precision required to do that. It's honestly hard to believe, even though I'm looking at the evidence. The conditions were favorable, Sabrina said. Good elevation, thermal optics, enemies who weren't aware of my position until it was too late. It wasn't as difficult as it sounds. Bullshit, another SEAL said bluntly. Mom, with respect, I'm a designated marksman. I train on this stuff constantly, and what you're calling favorable conditions would be considered extremely challenging shots by any standard. You're making world record level marksmanship sound routine. The colonel gestured back toward the facility. Ms. Cole, we need to complete your debriefing. And this time I need your complete background. I need to understand how someone develops the capabilities you've displayed, because what I'm seeing doesn't match any training profile I'm familiar with. They returned to the command center where Sabrina spent the next 3 hours walking through both engagements in detail. Her training background: competition shooting from age 8, mentorship from a Vietnam-era Marine sniper, specialized instruction from private contractors, years of operational experience in denied territories. Her methods: extensive preparation, custom equipment, understanding of ballistics and environmental factors, thousands of practice hours. So you're self-taught, essentially, the colonel said. No formal military sniper school. I've attended several military schools as a contractor, Sabrina replied. But most of my skill development came from private instruction and self-directed practice. I had the advantage of learning from multiple sources: military, competition shooting, international instructors, and synthesizing those different approaches into my own methodology. And your operational experience. Your file lists you as an intelligence analyst. That's my primary function, sir, but intelligence work in denied territories often requires defensive capabilities. I developed those capabilities so I could operate independently in high-risk environments. Hendry spoke up. Connell, with respect, does it matter where she learned? She saved 23 American service members in the last 12 hours. That's results that speak for themselves. It matters because I need to understand if her capabilities can be replicated, the colonel replied. If we can train other operators to this level, or if Ms. Cole represents a unique convergence of natural talent and training that can't be easily reproduced. The latter, probably, Sabrina said. I've had very specific advantages. Started young, had excellent mentorship, access to unlimited practice time and resources, no military bureaucracy constraining my training methods. That combination is hard to reproduce in a military training pipeline. The colonel made notes, clearly thinking about the implications. Ms. Cole, what you've done today will be classified at the highest levels. No medals, no public recognition, no official acknowledgement. But I want you to know that your actions have prevented a catastrophic loss of American lives and a serious intelligence compromise. That matters, even if we can't publicly acknowledge it. I appreciate that, sir, but I didn't do this for recognition. I did it because people needed help, and I had the capability to provide it. That attitude is exactly why you're so valuable, the colonel replied. Most operators at your skill level want recognition, want glory. You just want to do the job. That's rare. As the debriefing finally concluded, Hendris asked to speak with Sabrina privately. They walked out to a small courtyard away from the bustle of the facility. So what happens now? He asked. You just disappear back into whatever shadows you came from. Pretty much, Sabrina confirmed. I've got a flight out tomorrow. Another assignment waiting. This kind of work doesn't have a lot of downtime. Before you go, I wanted to give you something. He pulled out a SEAL Team Challenge coin, custom made, probably by his unit. This is from my team. We talked about it, and we want you to have it. As a thank you, and as a reminder that you've got 12 brothers who would drop everything to help you anytime, anywhere. Sabrina took the coin, feeling the weight of it, understanding what it represented. Challenge coins were sacred in military culture, tokens of respect and belonging that couldn't be bought or faked. Receiving one from a SEAL team was an honor that few civilians ever experienced. Thank you, Chief. This means a lot. It should, because you earned it. What you did today, both battles, that's the kind of thing that creates legends. The mysterious sniper who appears from nowhere and saves entire teams, they're going to tell stories about you in the Spec Ops community for years. As long as they don't use my actual name, I can live with that. The Guardian Angel, Rodriguez said, approaching from behind. That's what we're calling you. The silent guardian who watches over operators in trouble. Has a nice ring to it, Sabrina smiled. Better than some nicknames I've had. The team gathered, all 12 SEALs who'd survived the ambush, battered and bandaged but alive. They formed up around Sabrina in an informal group, and Hendris spoke for all of them. Mom, we've been SEALs for a combined total of about 80 years. We've worked with every special operations unit in the American military and several foreign ones. We've seen the best operators in the world do impossible things, and what you did today ranks among the most impressive combat performances any of us have ever witnessed. You saved our lives, then you saved this entire facility. We don't have words adequate to thank you for that, but we want you to know you're one of us now. You might not wear the trident, but you've earned the respect that goes with it. Hoya. The team said in unison the traditional SEAL expression of affirmation. Sabrina felt an unexpected emotion. Not quite pride, more like belonging. She'd always operated alone, had always preferred it that way. But standing here, surrounded by warriors who understood what she'd done and what it cost, she felt part of something larger than herself. Hoya, she replied, and the SEALs grinned. Sabrina stood on a firing range in an undisclosed location, training a small group of military snipers on advanced techniques. Word of what she'd done, carefully sanitized and classified but still word, had filtered through the special operations community. Now she occasionally received requests to provide specialized instruction to elite units. Her phone buzzed with an encrypted message. She stepped away from the range to check it. Guardian Angel, this is Ground Team Alpha. Situation developing that could use your particular skill set. Location classified. Duration unknown. Compensation significant. More importantly, Americans in trouble. Interested. H. Sabrina read the message twice, then looked back at the range where her students were practicing. Good shooters. They'd benefit from her instruction, but they didn't need her. Not the way those Americans in trouble needed her. She typed a single word reply, inbound, because that's what she did. That's who she was. The Guardian Angel, the mysterious sniper, the contractor nobody knew about until the moment they desperately needed her. And somewhere in the world someone was desperate. Someone was in over their head, facing impossible odds, calling for support that might not arrive in time. She packed her gear, the custom rifle, the carefully selected ammunition, the equipment that had served her through countless operations. She didn't know where she was going, didn't know what she'd face. Didn't know if this would be another impossible situation that required everything she had. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. When she arrived, when she settled into position, when she looked through that scope and found her targets, someone's impossible day was about to get significantly better, because the Guardian Angel was coming, and she never missed. The wolf doesn't announce itself to the sheep, but sometimes the wolf protects the sheep from other predators. And Sabrina Cole had made peace with being that kind of wolf, the one that operated in shadows, that struck without warning, that saved lives without seeking glory. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.